Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline. I'm your host for this Naval Postgraduate School Foundation sponsored segment here, where we bring you interesting faculty and students and what they're doing at your Naval Postgraduate School. And today we have Lieutenant Kyle Chance, who represents one of our students on campus. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Now, Kyle, you represent one of the 1,400 to 1,500 NPS resident students that are actually here in the local area. And before we talk about what you're doing at NPS and what you're doing for your studies, let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
How'd you end up in the Navy?
It's a good question. So originally I went to school and had no idea that I wanted to join the Navy.
You're not alone in that.
Yes, absolutely.
So where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Florida in
great.
Gainesville. Yep. So
Were you from Florida?
I am from Florida.
What
born
part?
And raised, Orlando area.
Oh, great.
So not too far away. Grew up a Gator fan and was privileged enough to go
to the
University of
Gators.
Florida. Yes, sir.
Did you work at Disney World or anything like that?
I did not, no. So we kind of avoided Disney growing up.
Okay.
But we've been a few times. Yeah.
Sure, great.
So went to school, had no idea I wanted to join the Navy until about a few years in.
And what did you study there?
I studied microbiology, actually. I was going to be a dentist. That was kind of what I originally had went to school
Okay, let's
for.
connect these things for a second,
Yeah.
right?
Good luck.
So, actually, yeah, right. So, was your dad a dentist, or
No.
was no? What motivated you to be a dentist?
I'd always been interested in medicine, so I was thinking about becoming a medical doctor. But
Right.
working with your hands and kind of having a craft was something I was interested in, at least as an
Working with your
18-year-old kid.
hands in somebody's mouth.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
a great thing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a fine profession. I didn't.
Sure.
But why microbiology? What's the connection there?
So it was kind of a science linked. It got me all of my prerequisites for dental school taken care of, and then also just something that kind of interested me. When I was studying, so.
I wanted to study phytoplankton at the University of Miami of Florida, if you want to know the truth. But that's a whole nother story, too. You're the guest today, so we won't go into that. So how did you go from wanting to be a dentist, and now did you get a degree in microbiology?
I did, yes.
Wow.
That was my undergrad, was in microbiology.
And how did you jump then to the Navy? Did you have a family history in the Navy?
So my grandfather served briefly for about 2.5 years, but at the time during college, I actually had a cousin. Turns out he was a recruiter. That took me under his wing and said, hey, if you want to do dentistry or if you want to do anything in the Navy, here's a great opportunity for you. And he kind of pushed me in that direction.
Well, the Navy will pay for medical school and dental school and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then you have to pay it back, right?
Exactly.
But that's not what you did.
Not exactly what I did. So, so dentistry kind of lost its interest to me.
Right.
Still kind of fell in love with the Navy and wanted to join and didn't really know a lot about it. So I became a surface warfare officer and went to OCS quickly after graduation and got sent to my first ship.
So let's parse that a little bit, right? Surface warfare officer, people who get on ships and frigates and our destroyers and cruisers and our amphibious ships. And OCS is Officer Candidate School.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So you actually got your you graduated from college, and then you went through a recruiter to go to Officer Candidate School up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yes, sir.
Right, and then you got commissioned and went into ships.
That's
so
it.
what was your first ship?
The USS Samuel B. Roberts at Mayport, Florida, in Jacksonville.
Now I happen to know that that's a Perry class frigate.
It is.
And how did you like Mayport?
I loved it.
Well, you were not quite next to family, so did you want to do that? Or?
It really worked out well. Being close to family was important for both me and my wife at the time. So, we're about 2 hours away from Orlando, an hour away from the college that we grew up or went to. So it really worked out.
We kind of flew by the wife thing for a second.
Yeah.
Where did that happen? In school?
It happened in school as well.
Great.
So we're both Gator grads. And
was she on board with joining the Navy?
Absolutely, yeah.
I use that pun.
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
She knew, well, I like to say she knew what she was getting into when we joined. But
I don't think any spouse knows what they get into when they...
Yeah, she's been the biggest support all along and been a huge fan of the Navy and continues to be. So.
Well, that's great. So you were Samuel B. Roberts. What did you do on that job?
I was the main propulsion division officer, so I was in charge of all the propulsion equipment on board, so the gas turbines,
the engines,
all of that.
So you qualified engineering officer of the watch first and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And did you deploy at all?
I did. So I did 2 deployments, actually. Both AFRICOM, so the first time kind of the Horn of Africa, anti-piracy stuff.
So AFRICOM is the commander that's in charge of Africa.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And you did anti-piracy in Somalia, off the coast of Somalia?
Off the coast of Somalia for briefly,
Wow.
for a couple months of the deployment.
That means you deployed across Mayport, across the Atlantic, and how did you get on the other side of Africa?
So we went through the Suez Canal.
Oh, you did?
We
you went
did,
through the Mediterranean.
Got to make that transit, which was really neat.
That must have been a life experience.
It was, absolutely, especially as a young ensign that hadn't seen the world at all.
See, one of the reasons I do these things is to get all those high school students out there who might be interested in joining the Navy and the adventures associated with it.
Absolutely.
So you went to the Suez, went down through the Red Sea, and then you joined, was it still Commander Task Force 51 at the time? 151?
I believe so, yes, sir, yeah.
Of course, you were in the engineering plant, so
yeah, I just did a brief time on the bridge every day to kind of get my OOD qualifications done.
Officer of the deck. Yep.
And then I was back down in the plant, learning as much as I could, and trying to figure out how to lead people.
That was your first deployment.
First deployment.
Right. And you qualified all your engineering qualifications then.
Mm-hmm.
Did you qualify your surface warfare pin in that deployment too? Or did you
not in that deployment, shortly after when we got home. So
well, it's kind of hard to do both in that short amount of period. I realize that.
It is. And we deployed almost, within a couple months of me arriving on board. So that whole process takes some time.
Well, that's kind of fun.
It was,
You just got your wife settled in Mayport and you said goodbye.
That's it. Yeah. It was quick.
I have the exact same story, but again, it's not about me. So, except mine was John L. Hall out of Mayport, as a matter of fact. I was a department head. So what was your second deployment, or did you make a second deployment?
Second deployment was also in AFRICOM, so again, near Africa.
You did the same thing?
But we spent a lot of time in the Med doing fire scout operations, so the unmanned helicopter.
Oh, so you had that on board? You had an unmanned helicopter on board
for the second deployment. Yes,
was the operations to test its capabilities, or
so it was testing because it wasn't the weaponized version yet, but we kind of took over for the frigates that were kind of doing that same mission before us, and then it got relieved by a frigate doing the exact same thing after us.
So did that fire scout go to the next frigate, or did they bring their own?
So I believe we transferred all of our stuff in Suda Bay.
Right.
So we had some equipment on board, but not the actual birds themselves. The helicopters went, and we transferred them over.
Now, did you have another job on Samuel B. Roberts?
I didn't. So I was lucky enough to stay in engineering the entire time. And
well, that's a different word. Some people say lucky. Some people
sure,
don't,
yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And then was that your sole tour then, sole division officer tour?
That was. So I spent 30 months on Sammy B and 30 months in engineering. And
now that's called an extended division officer tour when you do that, right? Or is that
so when
that?
It's funny because it changed at officer candidate school for me. What the 4 years that you initially have to pay back the Navy after you get commissioned, we're supposed to be at sea, and my tours were kind of split up into a 30-month tour and then a short 18-month tour. And now I believe they're at 24 and 25. I don't know what they're at now exactly, but so 30-month was actually the normal tour length for me.
So what did you do after the Samuel B. Roberts?
So because I got my engineering officer of the watch qual, I was able to kind of do a non-traditional second tour, and I went out to Desron 31 in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So moved all the way across.
Oh, you did Desron 31.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you were also surface warfare officer at that time too.
Surface warfare
you had
officer
both
qualified.
qualifications.
Right. So that helped a lot.
And you went to Hawaii.
Went to Hawaii.
Right.
Got stashed at a Desron that wasn't attached to a carrier at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of the man, train, and equip piece for all there were 7 DDGs at the time that were attached to Desron
destroyers.
31.
Right. And so what did you do on the squadron?
So I worked, again, kind of in engineering. So I worked as the assistant material officer.
Right.
So doing all of the engineering and damage control. Exactly.
Right.
A lot of in-serve help. 3M, so all the maintenance qualifications, certifications, we had to kind of assist with that. So it was me and another surface warfare officer, department head, kind of, alone and unafraid.
And you didn't deploy?
I did not deploy out of Pearl Harbor, no. Right. Did some underway time on the ships there, but did not deploy out of Hawaii.
Well, you were there for how long?
18 months, short tour.
Yeah, well, now, did you get a chance to go back and visit your family at all in Florida?
We did. So we went back for Christmas. We actually had our first child out there, so our daughter was born out there, and I think at about 5 months old, we made the trip back for Christmas. That was tough, so we only did that once because we knew we were only going to be there for 18 months. But it was neat.
And then you ended up in San Diego. Is that right or not?
No, so I actually ended up back in Jacksonville again.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, helping set up the new LCS squadron for all the
littoral combatant
ships,
which are smaller than frigates.
Smaller than frigates.
That's right. They're about 3,000 tons, right?
Yeah.
They were very new. They're our newest surface ships, actually.
They are, yeah.
So that must have been a lot of fun. And was that
neat.
Because of your squadron experience at Desron 32 or 31?
It was hopefully that helped me get the job. It was more of a location decision. We had already owned a house in Jacksonville, wanted to get back to the East Coast.
Back there,
right. One of the grandparents wanted to obviously be closer to our first daughter, so
sure.
So that was neat to be back and get the shore duty. We had to go to shore duty after being at sea, and that was a great tour.
Well, you've kind of summarized before you've come to MPS, but before we talk about your decisions to come to Naval Postgraduate School, what was, of all those tours, so you both had AFRICOM experience and you went out to the Pacific for Desron 31, what was your most memorable experience in all that?
Oh, goodness. I'd have to say probably the coming home of my second deployment. So the first one was kind of a whirlwind. I didn't honestly really know what I was doing yet. Still trying to figure it out. But the second deployment, I was the officer of the deck, bringing the ship home, all my family on the pier, my wife on the pier. just a special moment that I'll definitely never forget.
Coming up, that's great.
Yeah,
and plus, if you're driving the ship in,
it has a little bit more meaning behind it for sure. Yeah.
And Mayport is one of the shortest sea and anchor details.
15 to 30 minutes in your home. It's not so bad. Yeah.
But that's great. So, how did you come to MPS? What made that decision?
So while I was back in Jacksonville at LCS Run 2, I put in a lateral transfer package. So I went from surface warfare and got picked up for what's called engineering duty officer.
So you become an engineering duty officer.
Become an EDO now, and part of the requirement and the qualification of an EDO is to go to MPS or MIT to get a master's degree. So I chose to come to MPS, and here I am.
Better choice than MIT, I can tell you right now.
I think so.
Unless you love snow, but as a Florida guy and a Gator, you're not loving snow.
I think this is the furthest north that we've been stationed.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're now an engineering duty officer, but what are you studying at MPS?
I'm studying systems engineering.
So you get a graduate degree in systems engineering, and then you'll go on to become an engineering duty officer.
Right.
In fact, this series of segments that we have for this month will all be about engineering duty officers, and we're going to have Commander Todd Green and Jake Doziak here to talk a little bit more about that. But for you, what will you be doing next after you graduate? Do you know?
So I'm going to, funny enough, go back to Jacksonville. To Southeast Regional Maintenance Center, so the maintenance hub for all the ships stationed in Mayport.
So as an engineering duty officer, that's part of your responsibilities, is to work that maintenance on the different ships and that sort of thing.
Right. So there's a few mentor groups within the engineering duty officer community, RMC, or Regional Maintenance Center, being one of those.
Regional Maintenance Center.
Right. And so that path, while not necessarily chosen for me right now, is something that allows you to get your qualifications done in that first 3-year tour as an EDO trying to get qualified.
Great. And so as a microbiologist, what motivated you to become an engineering duty officer?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a math and science guy, so I don't think microbiology is too far off from engineering.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You're absolutely
it's a
right.
science for sure. But really, engineering duty, it offers a lot of great opportunities, not only in the Navy, but also on the outside as well. And I think being in an engineering plant and seeing all the engineering certifications and maintenance availabilities and dry dockings, it kind of perked my interest in what EDOs do, not even really knowing that was something that was offered in the Navy until later.
Now, some time ago, you could enter into the surface warfare community with an option to go EDO.
Right.
Did you do that, or was that
I did not?
No, you just asked for a regular transfer lateral.
Right. So I had to submit to the board and kind of wait for the results, and kind of finding out you got accepted to a college, if you will. So we were kind of on pins and needles for a little while, but got the great news, and they shipped us out here.
Now, while you were here at MPS, I want to talk about two other things with the rest of the show. One, what you're studying for your thesis work and focused on, and the other is the effort that you just concluded as the lead for the Total Ship Systems Engineering Project. And we're going to have Professor Doziak talk a lot about the TSSE program. But essentially, you led an effort that designed a ship at the request of someone outside in the Navy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that effort.
So part of the Total Ship Systems project is you get requirements documents for what we call the stakeholders. So the stakeholders being a couple professors and then Commander Green, as you had mentioned. So we get a whole list of requirements and mission sets that the ship that we're supposed to design is supposed to complete. So those center around 4 major operational scenarios with a whole bunch of different mission sets that the Navy is capable of doing. And we had to put a ship in the middle of all that and make sure we checked all the blocks and met all the requirements and design a ship really from the ground up. So
well, tell us a little bit about that ship. What was the ship design? What requirements did that ship have to meet?
So it was an unmanned, autonomous ship. So kind of a first up for a large displacement type ship.
So you're putting yourself out of a job as a surface warfare officer,
essentially,
and increasing your job as an engineering duty officer.
Exactly.
To maintain it.
Yeah, good job security for the EDOs for sure.
Yeah.
So we got tasked with designing an unmanned, autonomous, high endurance, so 70-day underway endurance, which is pretty revolutionary for a surface ship, and then also a ship that was multi-mission capable. When I say that, I mean it can do a lot of the things that the destroyers are doing now. So strike and surface warfare and anti-submarine warfare and anti-air warfare. So all of those mission sets that some of our larger combatants can do, this unmanned ship had to do as well.
Now, this was a team of students from different curricula, not just systems engineering.
Absolutely, yeah.
What other curricula were represented by the different officers that were involved?
Right, so we had systems engineering. There's 3 of us.
Right.
We also had 5 other mechanical engineering students, and then we had 1 applied physics student.
So it's a 3-course sequence that you actually get involved in this.
Right.
And I want to show a picture of what you designed. the Kanaloa, is that right?
Kanaloa.
Kanaloa.
Yeah.
Now, you notice it's an unmanned system with an actual aircraft that it talks to, but tell us a little bit about the name and how the ship was designed.
So I mentioned briefly I was stationed in Hawaii.
Right.
So the Kanaloa is for the Hawaiians is the god of the sea.
Right.
So there's we're kind of researching a bunch of names. We want to kind of come up with something a little bit clever and something that kind of paid homage to our background as some of the team members in the project. So Kanaloa stuck out. It was a great story. Had a lot of background. You look at Kanaloa and a lot of the images you see from the ancient Hawaiian pictures are this picture of an octopus or a squid.
Right.
And funny enough, we had 8 mission areas we had to select, and the octopus and its 8 legs worked out.
And so that kind of
the name quickly stuck, and that's what we went with. Yeah.
Well, you also created a crest for the ship that was
We
on
did.
that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And now these designs are not just drawings; they're actually down to the computer-aided design.
Right.
So it can be moved easily to Navy Systems Command for more detailed design if they absolutely need to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's great. Now, this is what the team effort that you led, and I know that you had many guests associated with it to come in from Naval Sea Systems Command, some from Washington, D.C., from the Surface Navy actually attended. Which was a great effort and something we'll talk about more in a different segment. But with our couple minutes left, let's talk about what you're focusing on for your research as a systems engineer.
Yeah, so as a system engineer, you get to do what's called a capstone, which was the project that you're talking about, and then also a thesis. So what I'm doing is looking at a common product line approach to kind of to figure out the economic benefits of that and how we adapt that for our software side of the house. So not just for hardware, but how can we implement that from a software side. So
you're talking about using existing code that
Right.
already exists and integrate that in, and would that save us money?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so we're doing that now with the Aegis combat system.
Which is on our destroyers.
Destroyers and cruisers. Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is a heavy software thing that helps us decide weapon systems employment. Sure.
Right. So Baseline 9 gave us that I call it a capability because it really is to rapidly integrate new capabilities through software. So we're kind of already diving into that as a Navy, and I'm going to do some research and dig in a little bit deeper on how that can benefit the DoD at large and a little bit more for the Navy side.
Well, now, will you be addressing potential cyber concerns as well, and the fact that with existing software, someone could actually give malicious software into our combat systems?
So I won't be specifically addressing that. I've had the privilege to sit through some briefs on Aegis and kind of the benefits of common source library, and that has always comes up. Cyber is a huge problem with really any military branch these days.
Well, Kyle, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
And I wish you the best of luck on your research for your thesis, and especially going back to Florida and doing good work for our Navy and our nation.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, for having me.
You bet. And thank you for joining us for this segment of the YourTown television program, sponsored by the NPS Foundation, where we bring you interesting faculty and students to talk about what they're doing in your local area.